Namo Gurube, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Tashi Dilek and welcome to all the viewers of 9th episode of Following Rinpoche program broadcasted by Dharma Television from Bodhanath Stupa, Kathmandu, Nepal. I am Khadro Lhamo Yanchen, the interpreter for this episode, and we are very fortunate to have Sangngak Tenzin Rinpoche to share his wisdom on the series of teaching on mind training. So I request Rinpoche to share the precious teachings with us. Simche namge samba tan loi cheda cheda wa chejong themon thebai chögi khorlo kodus.
Domingo Bardan La Mala, Nyamye Joker, Tavi Mokiche, Tonji Gombe, Shin of Yang Lambo, Reparta J. Wanchen Topper Show. Ola Sotatani, Nambat Sama, Yang Teranga, so Yang Chir, Jarvala, Gauchons.
So touch the lake. I'm very happy to see you all today.
Tatani Ngaso Tachi Sacha Sani Mambu Chigla Tani Losare, Tani Losarwat and the Sibari, Tani Hindi Taso Tani Kansagore Tachi Lama Punchok Samgu Tiji Tang Tani Tachin Laptandru Chigayang Tatanga Sochi Losarwatani Saria Yuba. Ota tendri samni tendri garsanani semganani gawa gumbaro o tendri tendri nanatani yakundu.
So this time is a Lunar New Year in many places around the world. So it is very important to think that because of the blessings of gurus and three jewels, we were able to celebrate this new year. So it is very important to rejoice being able to celebrate the new year.
Tani ta lo sarvaga nang de la yang arang sola chi konsagur ta na cha mepa tang ro tani konsagur rang ge ta samba namjin ton ta son chepa tang tani so so ge chu da chu pa yin na tani chu nyam nen da zo ya bo yong ya ge 어떤 그 양들이 공소그랬다 아마 권총라 더니 이체당 던저가 더니 손대고 던지더니 낭탄나더니 야보용 그랬어.
So it is very important to pray to the gurus and three jewels that for the good health. If you are Dharma practitioner, it's important to aspire for the accomplishment of good Dharma practice and for the accomplishment of all the aspirations that you make.
Datani in the so carsenatani, also lo servantiki nandelatani, aransoga, Chig consequent, Chunyam and Tendre Yapoyong. Tani consequent, Rang Tatondatani Jen Semchin la Jemhang Javala Sobata, Tendri, Chawa Yapo Segura, Tatani Mala Tantochea la Sobata, Tendi, Chawa Yapoyong Tendre Semchin Nanga Tang, Tani Molam de Pala Sobara, Tatendre Tani Nango Rest.
So in this new year, it is very important to make aspirations that if you're a Dharma practitioner, it's good to aspire that may I could practice Dharma very well, and it's very important to make aspirations that may I be very beneficial for the sentient beings, and so it is very important to generate this bodhicitta mind.
Tendri indi teni nga so yang katsang ni tandela teni kansir tati dentra kashi rangang la lubjong rimbate matane majin de shigyorwa otendre indi tasonga so terang get jusha zo de kanda yin sena da ji teni lama gewi shinin se adarwa tinse ko kor ta tela teni konse gore ma shia zo tendre jigres.
So on the previous weeks, we have been, Rinpoche have been sharing about the mind training, the series of mind training teachings. And for today, Rinpoche is going to share about how to rely on the spiritual master.
Tani ta tani naso tani kasang kong la lobjong tani lodok namba jirwa tani shibare tani karsena tani tarwi ga panyun zo tani chi tani ta chi desi ngot tani chibarwa 어떤 인디타소다 타르와세데 톱나 다 간르지니 톱고그레 세디타소 다 타르와 토버시발라 라마기 신인라 코로나다 인지문이 고 땡고여와 땡고그레 마토스 저와 지 라마기 신인라더니 마테니 타르와 덴데 톱송바 덴데드니 다지 용마시반로라 메바덴데 지레스.
So on the previous episode, Rinpoche shared about the 4 points that turn our mind away from samsara, and then also shared about the benefit of liberation. So if we need to attain liberation, it's very important to know how to attain liberation. And to attain liberation, it's very important to rely on spiritual master. Without relying upon the spiritual master, there is no path to attain liberation.
Tendri indi ta lama teni giwi shinin nga so tengu gu yore teni lama giwi shinin seya te nga so gu maten na tarwi lam seya te kandri ji dribyo dribgo ya te nga so rang tuk gu haku tabu yo mararwa o tendri indi ta so teni lama tarwi lam tendri driba la teni lama giwi shinin su korang teni tendri gun sanyi tang damba jik ten na ni te i damga nyan rawa. So
to attain liberation, we need to know how to walk on the path which leads us to liberation. So for that, it's very important to rely, it's very necessary to rely upon the spiritual master, because we won't be able to know how to walk on the path without relying upon spiritual master, and we don't have the self-power. To and acknowledge, we don't have the power to acknowledge by self to how to walk on this path which leads us to liberation without relying upon the spiritual master. So it is very important to rely upon the qualified spiritual master.
Dribala tata shiba namjin dendriga lama giwi shinin tengu gres penna karsana nga so gachi penna tani nga so amji memba daga tata shine karsana tani tangbo memba chebar sheba la yang tani kansu gure tani ngon la so so gman de so ya po jini jangu gurwa lobjong che gurwa rematos chera lobjong tang dendriga karsana tani nepala kandichi tangore to changma ya po chi tangbo lobjong yapo chagore mato tani lobjong machina memba chatumndaga daga namjin karresena tani ngaso ji tarwi ge lamde tonde nyerber sheba layang ngaso tangbo kangche goresena tata shiba namjin tani lama gi shinin de injimni ko tengu gundaga lama gi shinin tin tani karsena ni tani karche goresena lami damga te tani karsena sosola topgo grwa dama top dama tobaji bugun de kamarwa tani karche gore tin chotela karsena ni damga te so
So it is very important to rely upon spiritual master to attain liberation. So, for example, if you want to become a doctor and want to treat patients, first the doctor needs to go through all the necessary medical studies to become a certified doctor first. So it is very important to first, likewise, it is very important to first rely upon the spiritual master, and mere relying upon the spiritual master is not sufficient. What we need to do is we need to listen to the pith instructions instructed by spiritual masters, and mere listening to pith instructions also not enough. What we need to do is to do the practice which we already received the teachings from the spiritual master. So this is the step by step how to follow on the spiritual master.
Tangbo tani lama talang kiba sarwa tani indi tasu ta karsana tangbo sosogu lama giwi shinin te karsana tani yang tani kansu gure ta takse gora lama takadali ta tangbo lama talang kiba sayate karsana ni lama tela rangla gubi damga tendik damandik rawa ota tendraga karsana tani takada tangan te yuna tani kansu gure nte lama tengu gure sini otandi songu yores.
Yeah. So Khadro Rinpoche had stated about how to rely upon the spiritual master. So first step is to first examine the spiritual master. So while questioning about examining the spiritual master, it means about whether that spiritual master have the necessary instructions that you are looking for or not, and if the master, if that spiritual master have the pith instructions of the teachings that you want to practice, then you have to rely upon that spiritual master.
Oh yeah. That in the taso ni karsana lama tambo taklang kiba se hateng kandre senatanita tata kondo shiba namjinra tinga so lama gi shinin se ate kandre gi chete ting yore sena tani nga so tani ta lama gi shinin de jik ten songba ina tani kanso goro ta ji nga ge tani kanso nga tani ta tarwa togure de sane kanso goro ni nga la damga ji togure samnirwa tani ji lama tani gi shinin se ate tani ji ten yorwa rema tansi jirwa lama de la ten songba ina de sane ji karsana ji panjir mambo ji nga la top sare yang de la tena top go sa ji tani nga la raksare samne tani lama gi shinin ten songba ina ta te kanso re tangbo ni kanso gore lama gi shinin ten tang 그런 거랑라 다지 가르스나 고 논틀려 봐. 고 텐트지그레스.
So first step is to mastering ourselves in examining the spiritual master. So first, while examining the spiritual master, first our aspirations should be to attain the liberation. I'm going to rely upon the spiritual master. And to receive the pith instructions, I'm going to rely upon the spiritual master. So that should be the correct way of aspiration before relying upon the master. If we think, if we have the motivation or intention that before relying upon the spiritual master, if we think that, oh, I'm going to attain, accumulate lots of wealth from that spiritual master after relying upon the master, or I'm going to I'm going to have a very good post, the worldly post, after relying upon the spiritual master. So that itself is the wrong intention and motivation. So that is, we need to be very careful on.
rang kansu gure lama ki shinin ge ten tang la yang tni tata shiba nang jin ta ten ge so so ge karsena chi jawa ton de ni re atang yana tni karsena chi ta den de chi ge chete lama ki shinin ten song ba ina de yang ta pa chi chi chak ma da den de na song ga so ten di maim ba tni so so ge lama ten tang ge no de yang kansu gure tan de la ten song ba ina lama de la ten ba ina ning ka 다를 것만 접근을 해서 왔더니 delapteni 가르스나 직담바당 심진나 반도당으로와 샵도당 샵시당들이 용거리티 니 가르스나 어떻게 쳇드 드니 가르스나 니고 라마기윈 신인세야 됐던데 지들 땡고에 벌었어.
So first of all, it's very important to check our own motivations. So if you rely upon the spiritual master with the self-interest of worldly wealth and the post, that is not the qualified way of that is not the right motivation to rely upon the spiritual master. So it is very important to have the right motivation. And what is the right motivation is to attain liberation, I'm going to rely upon the spiritual master. To serve the Buddha Dharma, I'm going to rely upon the spiritual master. And to benefit all sentient beings, I'm going to rely upon this spiritual master. So this is the right motivations that we need to work on.
Tende ini ta tangbo lama takla kipa songa deyang kar senatani jikanso gore kar takbo gore senatani lama tela kyun kar ndu samni te taka shibi ge tonda mares tani tindi kwa len yo mar chitanga su chuba chi na semjin sedang sege tani lama ge shinin da phaja da semjin shan ji ge kyun korong takpa ina ko yang takpa tindi chaka yo mar tindi yin da so ta takse de kar takko yore senatela tani rangla gobi ge takma ten mendige te tambo taksi china digro tinde o ta ngala phambi ge karsana nga goya ge damnga de lamandala ndu samna ina tani ha ko wa ina tni ko lama gi shinin te ta ji lo chi sem ji ge koron tenarwa koron tapa jani ten goya tang o ta tinde restin.
So first is we need to qualify ourselves in examining the master. So here examining the master doesn't mean checking on the faults of the master. And to practice Dharma in first place, examining the faults of others is not the right conduct we need to engage in. So what we need to examine that spiritual master is whether this spiritual master have the pit instructions that I'm looking for. And whether this relying upon this spiritual master, whether I get attain liberation or not. So for that we need with instructions. So that is what mean about examining the master.
Tindi indi taso tini kansana chikta lama takta tela yang kansa gore ta zode lama tege tujin na tani 장첩 그 셈 득담은 들어와 오다 던저 가르스나 tani ta takpatila 상만 되그레스는 던저 송어랬다는 잠영지 장첩 그셈 득전나 요바이나 데코 어떤 가르스나 그 라마기 신인 산예바레 tani 되는 가르스나 tani 지 잠영지 장첩 그셈 득질라 거로 메송바이나 타코지 가르스나 tani 지 라마양 takpa지양 tani 고 자꾸마르와 각보르와 어떤 데서 했었다.
So there are different ways and to examine the master. So the main thing is subsumed within whether this spiritual master have love and compassion and the bodhicitta or not. So this is very important aspect, that if the master have love and compassion for beings and have the bodhicitta, then that is subsumed within the that is subsumed of all the qualities of the qualified master. And if the spiritual master don't have love and compassion and bodhicitta, then that is not the qualified master.
아니 텐데인데 땡아 소가 다 가르치고 근데 세나 라마 기위신인 직사고 근데 선이 달리나 아니 지금 기위신인 세고를 마동 기위신인 드니 마티니 던저가 상지직 양요 말에 상주 톱송 상주 고모 톱송 하던데 자니 요 말에 던데인데네 라마 기위신인 땡고 요래 던데인데 다더니 라마 기위신인 땡 던데 가르스나 드니 다 되게 담가가 돼 가르스나 드니 토바이나 다 가르레스나 드니 소소랑 그디 담가가 돼 강서그다 타르바 토비 제대로와 드니 샘진 탐지 그 돈도 상지 그 공봉도비하게 제대로 다른 그 강서그랬더니 강탑도 그더니 냠len 난고 그랬어.
So first, we need to seek upon the spiritual master. Without relying upon the spiritual master, there is no way to attain Buddhahood or to attain enlightenment. So it is very important to first rely upon the qualified spiritual master. And then after relying upon the spiritual master, we need to listen to the pit instructions. And while listening to the pit instructions also, we need to practice with the aspiration that for the benefit and enlightenment of all sentient beings. To attain liberation, we need to listen to the Pit instructions and practice the Dharma as well.
다더니 던데인디 자르바 롱첸바 근친 롱첸 람좀가니 가리 송바레 세나더니 마르기 냠보 투슴 돌와 당세니 던도 송바레 더니 갈세나티 가서 지 다당가랑소 셈진레와 가랑소 기질라니 마르바에 요레 더니 몽바 마르비 왕라 쇼로와 던디니다 대그 냠보데 가르차카 요레 세나티 가서 라마기 신인 띠니나니 티 담가 투슴 제야들와 어데레스.
So the great Longchenpa, the omniscient Longchenpa, had stated that as an antidote for ignorance, listening to the Pit instructions and contemplations. So, to avoiding this part, so that is one statement is not completed yet. So as we are sentient being, we have this ignorance. So to counteract the antidote of ignorance is we need to rely upon the master's Pit instructions and then do the contemplation.
tani lama pomba tang songre tende indi ta ngarang so kang se gure ta chinlap ge zawa de karsena ni lama gi shinin de tengo gwa tende re tani lama gi shinin de ne teni dale na tende ge karsena tani lami damga te nyan songba ina ta tani kang se gure tani ngarang so la ge tani chinlap thog gwa chinlap se na ta so so jil de thog gwa thorba te la tani korang chinlap se gre.
So then the great Longchenpa had made the second statement that the root of blessing is master and abandoning it. So that statement refers that the master is the root of all the blessings. So we need to rely upon the master's Pit instructions to attain, to receive the blessings.
chinlap ge zawa lama segerawa tande indi ta chinlap ge zawa de korong lama gi shinin de cha da yore tande indi ta so lama gi shinin temba de korong so so tabi gu ni tengo ga ani tabi gu ni matena chinlap thogure besena teni karsena ni chinlap de thogu mares.
So spiritual master is the root of all blessings. So while relying upon the spiritual master, we need to rely with the firm faith, and without having the firm faith and without relying upon the spiritual master, there is no way to receive the blessings.
아니 지금 직된 그 삼로당 지금 다지시바 남진다 지금 총그 삼로당으로 와 지 강세고래다 지 토부고 산라우고 삼로라서 바다 든지 그더니 라마기 신인 된송바이나 디 진랍 토부그레베 세나데 토부 말에스 간드레스나 라마데 가르스나더니 소소 그때네 장보 장자제와 요르지메 바치네 때바 코나 이치비 때바 때모 그때 마이나 다 거랑더니 라마데 간르 차크레 세나더니 진랍 그 자와 차카요로와 델랍디니 소소라양 진랍 토부요레스.
So, as stated before, while relying upon the spiritual master, if we rely upon the spiritual master with the worldly concerns like for the good business, for the good status or post, then that is the wrong motivation and intention of relying upon the spiritual master. That way, there is no way to receive blessings. So, it is very important to rely upon the spiritual master with the sincere faith. Mere sincere faith and devotion to the spiritual master, then only there is a possibility of receiving the blessings, because spiritual master is the root of all blessings.
다바당 무기로와 다바당 무기다 던르쿠나 지구군에더니 라마 the Yapojini Koran Soso Tengo, Tendrechi, Lama Tin, Lama Tin on the Tasso Tendre, Betanita, Tini Dalina. Teni lami damga teni kar nangba yinna yang konsigureta de la koron teso me parwa susu lami ka kar nangba yinna ne de la konsigureta ji teso me par du temgen grwa ta so ma ya yapo ji yinna ta teni kunang lami ka kar nangba yinna lami ka ya so kar ji nangba yinna yang konsigureta teso me pa ji teni je temgen rwa rumkin koron den de ji yengu yo res.
So while relying upon the spiritual master, it's very important to have the faith generated through trust and devotion. And while following the pith instructions of the spiritual master, we either the master advise us in a whatever spiritual instructions